All right, it looks like we're live. Maybe,
So
maybe. All right.
it's been
What are
a,
we
a
talking
week since I did this. I kind of forgot how to do it. 2 weeks.
All right. I will say I'm still not feeling great, so if you see me muting and clearing my throat, that's all.
Mm.
And I just had a shower, so my face is super red. But yeah, I'm trying to get out of like sleep mode. I took the day off today, trying to think I could have a longer weekend, but as is
Right,
normally the case, I got sick. It's just that
right.
this is the beauty of the new world. But yeah, I mean, honestly, listen, knock on wood, but it's just a sore throat and some
Yeah,
lethargy. I'm totally okay.
yeah.
I won't die.
Good.
But yeah, how have you been? Sorry to miss you last week.
Yeah, no, it's been good. I'm now we just did our fifth workout day with a personal trainer, so
Nice.
that was good. And I saw on the wall a drawing done by like how to work out, and it was a drawing by the guy who does the oatmeal.
Right? I know
Um,
that guy.
and and I said, "Oh, is that from something from some a poster?" And says, "Oh no, that was he works with his personal trainer is one of the other trainers at this one of the four trainers at this gym
That's awesome. I
because
had to Google it 'cause I
he
figured his
lives on the
name. Yeah,
island."
Matthew Inman? Does that ring
Matthew
a bell?
Inman, yeah. So
That
it's
is
just
really cool.
it was like a birthday present for his personal trainer.
Oh, that is amazing. I'm a big fan of his comics. I think we found them because he had pugs back in the day, so we had a lot of comics about just pug behavior,
Hmm.
which is kind of
Yep.
funny. They do interesting things
Yeah.
as dogs. I think mine just left, but she was there on the couch there for a bit.
Yeah,
Is
you
there
said your
anything
dog
you
was
Yeah?
sick. Your dog was sick as well, or
I'm not sure if I said that, but yeah, a bit of an ear infection. Took them to the vet, just put some stuff in their ear.
yeah.
It's interesting in that the ear infection will affect the hearing, but the medication definitely affected the hearing.
Hmm.
So the poor dog could barely hear for almost a whole week.
Oh,
But yeah, it seems to be recovering now, which is good. It was just like the liquid medicine that was in its
yeah.
ear was causing it to not be able to hear as much as usual,
Mm.
which yeah, it's too bad. It's really easy though to figure out if a dog can hear. You just talk about food and if their ears don't perk up. If
Snack,
you're wondering,
snack.
in case you're wondering.
Yeah, yeah. My our dog doesn't really react to food. Like, do you want food? But snack. She loves the word snack.
That's hilarious. Just
Um,
like certain words.
certain words. And walk.
Right.
Snack and walk are the things that. Oh, and sleep. Bedtime. Bedtime. You want to go to bed? And then she's like, "Oh yes, let's go, let's go. Oh, let's run upstairs. So I'm so excited. I get to go to bed." Because she doesn't sleep for 14 hours a day.
Now, do you have any hope that we can kind of decipher animal talking using AI or Gen AI? Have you have you
Oh,
seen
I'm
this?
sure there are. I wouldn't be surprised if there are people that. I mean, there are people that say they can understand what dogs
Right.
say, or because of the way they bark, and certain types of barks sound different. It's like, yeah, come on, it's
Yeah, I mean, maybe it's
maybe
possible.
probably not.
I I think the one that I heard of was I want to say whales. It may have been orcas, but they determined that there were because a lot of these Gen AI models can
Mm,
do things like novelty.
yes,
So they determined that one of the novel sounds was in fact their, and I'm gonna put this in quotes, their name. Like
right.
but they each seem to have an individual sound that they would
Yes,
respond to. So
yes,
if you would say that word, we sorry, we may have talked about this before, but I thought that was kind of interesting because it's similar
yes.
to the dog. You can test using something that they know. It seems like this thing that they know
Mhm.
is specific to them because only one animal would respond at a time, kind of thing. Which is, I mean, we're getting somewhere, and that's kind of interesting to me.
Yeah, I wouldn't doubt it for whales. My dog is
Oh,
definitely
yeah.
not nowhere
Sorry.
near
We were just talking about
the
pugs, and I don't
intelligence
mean to
of
insult my dogs.
yeah, no, I I would say a whale is far more intelligent, like orders of magnitude more intelligent than my dog and any dog I've ever experienced.
Right, so when we're talking about dogs making sounds, I think that may depend on the individual dog. I
Mhm.
think what the scientists are trying to figure out is if there's a language that we can decipher
Sure.
for whales,
Yeah.
like, if they actually have a language,
Yeah.
but so far, of course, the models have only helped them find novelty,
Right.
which it really comes as no surprise.
Yeah.
But I do find it interesting that they could play back those sounds and that
Mhm.
one animal at a time would respond. So I think that's
Mm.
kind of interesting. I don't know what we could do with this info, but yes,
Yeah.
let's get a legion
Yeah,
of
I mean,
whales.
maybe they're going to, when they finally are able to talk and we're able to understand, they're going to teach us about time travel, and we'll
Oh,
be able to go back and forth. That
way
was
better than what I had in mind, which is just water polo. Because I figured if you could
because
call out one at a time, perhaps you could train them.
wasn't
I
that
don't
what
know.
the aliens told us in from Arrival?
Water polo. Interesting.
No, time travel.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I was like,
Did
I
you
don't
ever
remember
see
that
that?
part of Arrival. I have. It was a really good movie.
Yeah.
It was all about language. Yeah. Yeah. That's the perfect movie reference for
Great
this.
music too. Great soundtrack.
Yeah, it was pretty good. Was it Danny Elfman yet
No,
again? No.
no, it's some other guy. I think he committed suicide. The
Oh
composer,
shoot.
but um, we were. Who was I talking about him? Oh, the guy who is a does music for a video game. Was talking about him um recently.
Very cool.
Oh, my clip.
You
Oh, no, no,
lost
no.
your headphones. For those of you just listening to audio, Matt is currently struggling with his headphones in a very
Yeah.
comedic fashion.
Well, it's got the clip on the back, and I'm trying to clip it to my shirt. There it is.
I'm just wrestling with
Yeah.
my drink. It's all good.
Yeah.
So
So
listen, I've been playing with this AI stuff yet again. I'm not sure if you've
yeah,
heard
yeah,
of
I've heard about it. I've heard
Gen.
of AI. Yes.
I finally wanted to kick the tires on Llama 3.2 just to figure
Okay.
out how well it could work. So I decided to go through like a new install on a new computer to figure
Mm-hmm.
out what was happening. I decided to use an i9 with 128 gigabytes of memory.
Cool.
That happens to also be my NAS. Would not recommend this for most use cases.
Hmm.
However,
No
uh,
GPU.
no GPU. Well,
Oh yeah,
iGPU, but I don't think you'd want to use it. Yeah.
no.
Surprisingly, with 3.2, you could get an answer back. I felt like why water wet kind of thing took about a
Yeah,
minute, maybe 45 seconds.
yeah.
So not definitely not great, but honestly not awful in terms of the usage. Bless you.
Yeah,
In terms of the usage, I think it was using about 2 gigabytes of
yeah.
virtual memory or video memory. And the responses are pretty fast, but what I really liked is that they're really detailed.
Yeah.
And also, I didn't even realize that what I was asking about, I can't remember what I was asking about. Like I've forgotten that there are like censored and uncensored ones. So I was
Mm.
asking anyway. I ended up getting around it by saying this is a movie script, which I
Right, right.
confirmed still works, which is kind of funny. It's like I think it was probably How to Rob a Bank, which is the
Yeah,
common one I
yeah,
ask. But yeah, it's surprisingly okay. The amount of
yeah.
tokens they gave back were pretty good, and it seemed to be really good at giving me more words for Stable Diffusion. You start with a small prompt,
Mm-hmm.
and then
Mm-hmm.
make a bigger one and send off. Stable Diffusion though on yeah, it's no go on CPU. So I ended up
Mm.
reinstalling this on something with GPU.
Right.
Llama 3.2 is very very quick on a GPU.
Yeah.
So I was using
Oh
a
yeah.
4090 for the
Yeah.
next test, and it was just so much faster.
Yeah.
Stable Diffusion also seems to have come a long way in that I
Mm.
can generate 1024 by 1024 images in
Mm-hmm.
pretty quick
Mm.
generation time. So I think 150 iterations and
Mm-hmm.
like I want to say 10 seconds kind of thing is
Wow.
pretty good. Which is that sounds like a lot, but that's actually really fast
And
for
so,
a
what
49.
tools are you using to get there? What's like your UI that you use?
I'm glad you asked. So the reason I started a new install is because I saw and I hate to give a recommendation for Network Chuck, but it was Network Chuck from I think
Mm.
5 or 6 months ago,
Mm.
just randomly happened in my YouTube feed saying, "Hey, you can do your AI setup offline. Here's
Mm-hmm.
how we go through Docker." There was the Stable Diffusion stuff. I think was a local install.
Mm-hmm.
In order to get the steps, you had to log into Network Chuck's website, which I wouldn't like. I feel
Mm.
like this could all be on
Okay.
GitHub instead. But regardless, the repository that Network Chuck was using was the N8N. I,
Mm.
I want to say offline AI repo,
Mm-hmm.
something like that, self-hosted. I believe is
Well,
what.
that repo I think is actually fairly new. That's in the last 2 months.
Okay.
So if the video is from longer ago,
Oh, it
it's
it
probably not that.
is. It is from longer ago. I wonder if I've seen a
So
few
Network Chuck was
videos on
using
this.
N8N?
I thought so, but I did watch another one from Techno Tim, so perhaps I'm conflating these two bearded individuals doing IT support.
I didn't
'Cause I
think
think
either one of them did anything about N8N.
I didn't think so either. Yeah,
Yeah.
so it was
Hmm.
2 months ago, I think, for the Techno Tim one. Does
Okay.
that sort of sound
Could
about
be.
right?
Yeah.
Okay, okay. At any rate, one of these 2, and now I feel
Yeah.
awful. One of these 2 definitely sent me down the right path.
Hmm.
But it's just a repo that includes, N8N, it includes Postgres, it includes Ollama, it grabs Llama 3.1 by default,
Hmm.
very easy to fix,
Yep.
or very easy to change
Yeah.
if you want to. It's just a command line that you run, and it's all in Docker Compose. Oh, sorry, it's got, I think, Quant, I wanna say.
Quant. Yep.
Yeah.
It's a vector
As
database.
well.
Yep.
Yeah, yeah. So
Yeah.
you can do RAG, that kind of stuff. It's also got the
Yeah.
N8N front end, which, I played around with for a bit, and then after that, I ended up using, OpenWebUI,
Hmm. Hmm.
which I guess I haven't used in a minute because it asked me to sign up, which I thought was really
Yeah.
weird prior to using it. I don't know. What's your take on signing up
Well,
for offline
signing
tools?
up so it requires you to sign in to the create an
Both.
account for
Yeah,
your website that you've created on your host. So you have to
right.
sign up and then you sign in as that user. I mean, there are some use cases where you're going to host this for lots of people, but that's probably not the default. So the fact that you
Right.
have to create a user account for what is, I would assume in most cases, 90% of the time, is a single user product, it's just stupid. I can't think of any good reason to do that for a single user product unless you are hosting it for other people, which in which case there should be like a switch that turns on multi-user. Boom,
Uh,
done.
Agreed, yeah, in the command line, and I
Yeah.
haven't done any research to figure out if there's a way to just strip it out because
No.
I assume that there is. In the video that I watched, I wanna say it's Network Chuck, but I feel like it might be Techno Tim. They were talking about their children, actually, so they want to be able to,
Yeah.
like,
Great.
restrict like log things that they're getting into or maybe have some sort of RBAC or something
Mm-hmm.
like that.
Mm-hmm.
I kind of get it. And I think if you had, let's assume this is at work and you've got
Yeah.
users using it, you could say, hey, by the way, I'm logging everything. Don't
Right.
use this for nefarious purposes, that kind of thing. Kind of makes sense. What
But
really
even
rubbed me
then,
the wrong way
it's
is
like
like signing up to something
super.
external
It's not
for
very
something.
secure. I mean, it's a
No, no,
very rudimentary security,
right.
and at least it was last time I looked. And if it's, I mean, some people would say, well, to keep the chats separate so that you can't see. It's like, well, in the case of a family, I don't want them separate. I mean, I would want to know what. I mean, when Stella gets to a point where she's going to be doing this type of stuff, I want to see that whatever she's doing.
Right.
To
That
because
I mean,
that's
that
what
is what the
being a parent
YouTuber
is.
was trying to do, I
Yeah,
think, is trying to figure out, like, what's happening
yeah,
in the family, that kind of thing,
yeah,
but I guess maybe the approach is different,
yeah.
or maybe the fact that there was a login made them think about a different type of approach, but yeah,
Hmm.
you're absolutely right. There's ways
Yeah,
of doing this that don't require a login. I
yeah.
thought the external sign up and signing up to newsletter as part of, like, a local install was odd for me.
Hmm.
The other thing I installed at the same time, and I hate to paint them with the same brush, but do you remember Portainer?
Hmm.
Does
Oh
that
yeah.
ring a bell? Yeah, because Portainer does the same thing now with their community edition, that kind of thing. So maybe this
Hmm.
is
What do you mean same thing? Oh,
I don't wanna
with
say like a
logging in,
trend, but like
really?
the sign up and the login,
Oh,
yeah, yeah.
weird.
So the sign up and the login are different. So they're
Hmm.
different things, but you do have to log in, makes sense. It's kind of like
Right.
running as root. But signing up to a newsletter at the same time when you first go to sign in is like,
Oh,
oh, like
yeah,
adding an email address to it,
yeah.
and yeah, I don't know. Is this where we're at for the free tooling? Is this the new
Mm,
open core? This is where my brain went to immediately. Is
right.
like, are we selling people's usage
I mean, I
information
can
or just
understand that
one open
for
source?
with Portainer, you can get you can either use the free, totally free version, or
Right,
there's the business version, and you
right.
can get the business version for 5 hosts for free.
I didn't know that. Okay, there we go.
And so for getting access to that business, whatever they call it, for those free 5 hosts, that makes sense that you'd have to sign up for because that there's definitely a value add there.
Right.
Um,
That's
I mean,
interesting.
it's kind of like
I
the
may actually do that actually.
well, it's kind of like
Now
the
that because I
five.
do have 5 hosts. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's like the free. I assume this still free level for Datadog is still there, where it's the 5 hosts and 1 day of retention.
I I should know what these limits are, but I don't. I do have a free account that I still
Yeah,
operate for our Hackspace, yeah.
yeah.
But I think it's something like that. I do remember a day of metrics being the
Yeah.
key for us. Yeah.
The
Yeah.
hard part around
Mhm.
something like Datadog is, 1 day of retention is that's pretty hard to deal with.
It can be for sure.
Yeah.
The other thing I was thinking of, and this is maybe I have my work hat on, like the other hat, not this one, is what would and again, forgive me, I'm this don't represent my company. I'm just thinking, like, what would the metrics be that I'd want out of Olama? Because there's a
Mm.
lot actually in the command line when I'm running it. There's a lot in there basically. There's a
Yeah.
lot of info. There's a lot of stuff I want to know. At the same time, there's a lot going on the graphics card, especially if I'm using
Yeah.
multiple models, or now that I've got containerized, I can kinda, like,
Right.
move things around a little bit, which I hadn't thought of before, and I feel like this gets me thinking a little bit more about, like, if this were an enterprise and I did have 30 users and maybe I had, like, 3 graphics cards or whatever, what would that monitoring need to look like in order to give them that service internally? That's kinda where my brain is. So, like,
Right.
what do I care about aside from GPU temperature and memory usage and stuff like that? What in the application is actually important to me? And funnily enough, I came across a bug where Stable Diffusion was extremely slow on the NVIDIA 4090 because of
Hmm.
different versions of PyTorch. So that seemed to be like a smoking gun. Like sometimes the versions of libraries can cause changes between them. Is all I got to. But that's I guess what I'm trying to say is that the Olama metrics in the console as logs seem to be pretty rich as long as I can parse them already.
Hmm. We're thinking of like the Olama metrics.
Hmm.
That is something I wish was better, and I'm really surprised is not better.
Gotcha.
Um, one of the one of the main developers for Olama, Mike Yang, who he used to be, I think it was before it was a company called Sauce Labs, I think it was called,
Oh, I know Sauce.
um,
Yeah.
and
Stay
uh,
tuned.
um, and he's all very gung ho about using Prometheus and using making exposing metrics. And the first the first thing we all worked on together was infra for role-based access control for
Right.
Kubernetes, and it was very important to expose uh,
Is it
that
prom
endpoint.
PI endpoints? Yeah.
Um, and I feel like we even did that for KeyPair, which was the SSH key management tool.
Hmm.
And I'm surprised that they haven't. I'm
It's
still going
hard,
to
eh?
say we. They haven't exposed a Prometheus endpoint for Olamo, because I think that would be really useful. And the way a lot of people will do that is
Right.
they'll either instrument their code,
Mhm.
so what's that thing? Application performance
APM.
APM. So that
Yeah.
kind of a
I love how
style of
you've
where you
already forgotten this
I've
term.
forgotten. Yeah, I still say me, us,
Yeah,
but
yeah,
I've
yeah.
forgotten
I like
APM.
it.
Um, but in order to do anything else, just interacting with some other application, in order to get metrics out of Olama, you kind of have to proxy it, and then or turn on debug mode, and then when you have debug turned on, then all those metrics show up in the logs.
Oh, sorry. I was just assuming they'd be there because
No,
they're in
they're
the
not.
console. Okay, gotcha. That, I mean,
Yeah,
there's gonna be a hit there in terms of disk
yeah,
IO, is one of the things for debug logging in my
yeah.
experience. Okay, I'll play around with that.
Um, so yeah, I wish there was a metrics endpoint, because that would be amazing. That would be
Yeah.
so great
I mean,
for
they're also multi-line was the first thing I noticed is that
yeah.
I'd be parsing multi-line. And, I'm thinking on the NVIDIA side, they've got Prometheus endpoints, but I think it's for NVML? It's been a
Hmm.
minute since I've used it, but yeah, in terms of like their how you'd actually expose the NVIDIA metrics to something within Docker, I think that's the way you do it. But yeah, we're
Uh,
getting to a point now. I'm getting kind of excited, like where we're getting businesses interested in offline models, and we're thinking about monitoring. This is an exciting place to
right.
be. Like this is generally when people are
Yeah.
getting serious about something. They've purchased a GPU, they wanna know how much it is actually costing them or maybe what
Right.
return they're getting on their investment. I like this.
So there was a somebody in the chat, Engelsman
Right.
Finland,
Yeah.
pointed
What's going on
out
with RSA?
this. Wait, am I on the right page? No, I'm not on the right page. Let's stop that. Close that. It's trying to show me all the windows.
Yeah, so this happened
Uh,
yesterday, it looks like.
yeah. Now, there we
Oof.
go. Chinese scientists use quantum computers to crack military-grade encryption. Quantum attack poses a real substantial threat to RSA and AES.
Not good.
Um, language research paper.
Using a local quantum computer.
Yeah.
They're using D-Wave, which is, I believe, in Burnaby, just outside of Vancouver.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. A friend of
Okay.
mine works there. This, they had talked about this a few times actually, in terms of like a
Yeah.
possible outcome
Yeah.
of some of the tech that they were working on. Oh man,
Interesting.
yes, D-Wave Advantage. This is very interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sure this is going to change pretty quickly. There are
Yeah.
other ways of encrypting, but I don't know if there's other ways of making it quantum proof.
Yeah. I don't know.
Is the issue. So I think the
Yeah.
main thing here is coming up with prime numbers very quickly is something that
Right.
quantum computers can do on their own. I'm sure that the paper goes through it, but my understanding of this problem is that's the crux, is that being able to find pairs of or multiple sets of uh, prime numbers is the key in order to
Because isn't
factorize
I'm
the thing. Yeah.
I'm trying to remember my one like introduction to what quantum computers are, which I'm sure is the person who does the videos Huge If True, or I think it's called.
Chloe
Um,
Abrams.
yes,
Big fan,
yes,
big fan. It might
amazing.
actually be Abram, sorry. I think Abrams tank every time I think of her name.
And with that, yeah, it was like not it's not coming up with one. It's not coming up with the prime numbers quickly. It's coming up with all the prime numbers all at once, kind of thing.
You got it, all the
Yeah,
prime numbers, yes.
yeah.
It's very interesting. It's like, Schrodinger's cat box, I think is what we're talking about here.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
So
Yeah, this is huge news.
yeah.
I'm not sure what we can do with the above other than, like, don't store your passwords online, start writing them on sticky notes and, affix them into your computer screens.
Maybe that 3-ring binder that my dad used to carry around that labeled passwords was actually a good idea.
I mean, it's quantum proof, so yeah,
Yeah,
it's
yeah. It's like like my I was just talking about this with my mother a few days ago. We were so annoyed with my dad passed away 10 years ago now, but
okay.
he would do like silly things like this, the password in a notebook, which maybe again not so bad. But the other thing he'd do is, if you gave him a key to the
Mhm.
house, he would put a little key ring on that key, write down the full address to the house. Like, no, no, if you drop this, I'm
It's
screwed.
the opposite of what you want, yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah.
Yeah, I do wonder about what security looks like now, like whether or not I don't know if you've ever worked with an air gap system, but these are starting to make a lot of sense to me
Right.
now, at least having systems that are networked but not the same network as attached to the yeah, the internet.
Yeah,
This is anyway, I'm just
and
kind of
we
worried, I guess.
and
I've
I
got no good news here.
and I guess the concern, one of the big concerns about, that we've known that this was going to happen,
Mhm.
and the concern wasn't so much that it's going, how do we stop this from happening? It's going to happen, and it's going to
Right.
get better. It's not going to require, maybe it'll always require quantum computers, but quantum computers will become easier to access. Um, but the big worry is that entities, large companies, hacker groups, or
Nation
countries
states.
are
Yeah.
just starting to collect all the information that has all this encrypted information in it that is they can't decode, but eventually they will, and they just keep all this stuff around, and eventually they're able to open up the treasure chest at some point, and so change all your passwords.
Yeah, just nothing but doom and gloom here,
Yeah,
folks.
yeah,
It does look like this is something that was done in isolation, so it's not something that
yes,
was done in public. It's not like there's a nation state grabbing your passwords right
right,
now. But yeah, this is so it looks like it was over 50-bit, which is pretty cool. So I think
right,
64-bit would probably be the target they're looking at. But yeah, they're saying RSA 2048 is the next target
right.
in one of the articles I'm looking at, which is like it could take 30 years. Yes,
Yep.
if you were to do it normally. Yeah. Ugh.
So it's
Anyway,
interesting that it is. Oh yeah, so it's a Canadian computer that was being used.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
In British Columbia, in Burnaby.
Hmm. Canadians. That's the secret. We get rid of all Canadians.
Now listen. I think you know that I'm very much still here for the editor wars, and I'll have you know that I have it on good authority that D-Wave actually really likes Emacs. Just want to put that out there.
More reasons to hate them.
Which I think is phenomenal. I think it's fantastic. And if I recall correctly, there's a lot of interesting code going on there too. Imagine writing code for these systems. It must be
Hmm.
super fun. Yeah, and then there's somebody in the chat talking about man in the middle. I mean, yeah, there's supply chain attacks, man in the middle
Hmm.
attacks. I think Matt talked about offline attacks as well. If you're just storing encrypted
Yep.
data for years, there's quite a few vectors here. It's yeah, not not fun. Aside from that, I got a bit of a checkout, but I want to talk about a little bit. So I ended up picking up the Steam Deck, but I don't
Oh
want to
yeah.
take too long in. I just wanted to say that it's very interesting to me that I'm not sure if we've got Linux on the desktop yet, but we're getting pretty close to desktops that are mobile, as far as I can tell, because this thing it's like it's a whole computer
Hmm.
basically with like little Joy Cons attached to
Right.
it, and it runs Arch Linux, which I thought
Hmm.
was hilarious. And when
Yeah.
you jump to the desktop, not only that, but it runs KDE, which is
Hmm.
not what I would pick for a desktop, but here
Right.
we are. So I've got a KDE, I think it's Plasma
Mm.
handheld, which is kind of interesting.
Yeah.
I'm sure you're all wondering what game I'm playing on this. I'm playing the meta game, which is called Customize the Steam Deck. So far, probably have about 20 hours in this game, which is like, yeah, just playing around with the freaking thing.
Wow.
It's kind of cool. It's neat to see hardware in this form
Yeah.
factor with physical buttons. I like it.
Yeah. Yeah. Because I had used. I mean, going back. This is before Stella, so I think one of our last real well, actually that year. God, we did a lot
Hmm.
of vacations that year. Um, I think that was the year that we did the uh, rafting through the Grand Canyon on
Right?
the Colorado River, and we also did we did I think a trip to Amsterdam, and we also did a trip to Italy.
Wow,
All using points for everything, so we've hardly spent
fantastic.
anything. Um, but the trip to Italy, we actually stayed at an agriturismo in like to the west of Florence. So we stayed with so oh, it was great. We in Florence we were able to stay with uh, a house owned by a fellow Datadog employee. You know,
Hmm.
his her husband was Italian, and so we stayed at their place, which was amazing. Such a great place to be. And then we headed out of town to this agriturismo. It basically means a farm that opens up rooms to for you to stay. It's like
Yeah, it
a
sounds like
Airbnb.
agro-tourism.
Yeah, agritourism. Yeah, exactly. Very good. Very smart.
I mean, listen, I don't speak Italian, but
And this place had like I don't know, had maybe 6 rooms. So it was meant as a. I mean, they created basically a hotel on their land, and
cool.
they did olives and wine. So they had grapes on site, and they also made their own wine, and we drank a lot of it. But they had a lovely pool, and so Tony would spend a lot of the day, that when we were actually staying there and not driving around in the pool. I spent most of the time sitting by the pool, but with a Raspberry Pi
Of
4
course.
that had its own access point on it,
Okay.
and an iPad,
This is
um,
amazing.
and a keyboard, probably actually this keyboard. No, not this
Okay.
one, but a similar keyboard, and using that, and that was I basically had a full system. So I mean, uh, thinking of that Steam Deck, it's kind of I didn't have the Joy-Con buttons, but I kind of had a lot of that even 5 years ago, 6 years ago.
Yeah, what's the term for that? Battle station? Mobile
Hmm.
battle station.
Oh, that sounds pretty cool. I don't know.
You not heard of this before? I think it's
No.
like your quote unquote like desk battle station. Like, when you sit down, you're ready to work, that kind of thing.
Hmm.
I believe the alternative to this is like the mobile battle station. The
Hmm.
the reason it's fresh in my mind is because one of the additions for the Steam Deck was is really just a terminal. But it
Oh
was like
yeah.
you can plug in a keyboard and use the terminal on this just like you expected to on your mobile
Mm.
battle station. I think was in the release notes.
Right.
And I thought, yeah, like this is actually if
Hmm.
I've got a SSH into a Raspberry
Yeah.
Pi and quickly do something, if I've got a device that runs, Linux on
Right.
an AMD chip, let's do this. Very,
Right.
very cool.
And one
Now
of
I'm
the
wondering. Yeah, go ahead.
no, I was just saying going from there. I had a where was it? Some device. Oh, I think I have a Raspberry Pi up in kind of a crawl space, or like whatever attic space, um, and uh, and it runs Pi-hole, and I have it on a separate Raspberry Pi, and that's all it does.
Mhm.
Um, I had it before, like in Proxmox or in VMs, but as soon as you do that and the network goes down and comes up, it can't come all the way up because the VM isn't started in the
Oh, yeah,
and
yeah.
so it's like bouncing up and down, and so I just put it on a dedicated machine. But it's in a place where I can't put a monitor, so I for some reason I couldn't connect to it. How do I get to that? Now that the iPads are USB-C, and I was just basically able to plug in a HDMI to USB-C adapter into the iPad and hook up a HDMI cable to the Raspberry Pi, and now I had a full display. I mean, the display it just makes displays so much easier than they were before. Having to lug up I think I have a 12-inch monitor in the garage just for the times where I just need to plug in a monitor
Right.
so I can start working with something. And now the iPads replace that.
That is so
It's an
cool.
expensive way of getting there because the iPad's not cheap.
Yeah,
Yeah,
but if you've
but
already got it,
there
it
you
it
have
totally
it.
makes
Yeah.
sense. I do remember there was one, person on YouTube who was talking about mobile coding with their iPad and the Raspberry Pi back in the
Hmm.
day,
Yeah.
which I thought was kinda interesting. Again, mobile hotspot, that
Yeah.
kinda thing,
Yeah.
which I found compelling. Someone in the chat pointed out that Samsung had DeX. I'm definitely a
Mm.
huge DeX fan. One thing that I will say is that I believe 2 years ago, they discontinued it for Apple Macs, which was
Mm.
disappointing to me, but otherwise, it's pretty cool. You can run, like, full, like, Linux desktop on there.
Hmm.
It's actually kinda fun.
Yeah. I in the Boston office. We had a Boston office for Datadog. We
Mhm.
had set up. There were. This is before the current office. Is it? Yeah, I think it's before the current office. There were 3 or 4 monitors against one of the walls, and it's a sales office, so they're always showing like sales stats and having all the teams compete against each other.
Mhm.
Um, but that was running off of I think it was actually a Windows machine, but it could have been a Linux box. But it was
Right?
basically just what looks like the Amazon Fire Stick. I mean, it was basically that form factor. It was like a looks like a USB stick, but it's a full computer, and it was actually a pretty decent machine. I don't
Right.
know if that's what Dex was like.
DeX is kind of a way for you to plug in I imagine a USB keyboard and mouse and HDMI and plug it into a screen and make that your computer.
Oh, okay.
It's pretty cool. So yeah, Point of Oak says it doesn't look like a full desktop. You can install a full desktop on it, so it
Mm,
it, it looks like Linux, which is actually pretty cool. And yeah, we're talking a little bit about Termux and things like that, but it
mm,
it does essentially become a
mm.
desktop environment, which is actually really neat.
Yeah.
It could run Microsoft Office, that kind of stuff on there. It'll run a web browser, of course. So you could do like a lot of the
Right.
regular day to day stuff. It was surprisingly cool, especially because the power of these devices back then, I guess this would have been 5 or 6 years ago now that I was dealing with these, but
Mhm.
it was surprising basically how fast ARM CPUs were then. I don't think
Mhm.
anyone these days would be surprised at the speed of like an S23, for example.
Right.
But yeah, it was night and day compared to one of those little mini Windows sticks, which is what I think you're
Yeah.
talking about. It's
Yeah.
quite a bit faster. That said, if it's the same company, I think there is a new revision to that little stick you're talking about
Uh-huh.
that goes all the way up to including, like, the latest Intel chip, but it has I think it's Xe or She graphics, like the new
Mm.
basically on-chip graphics,
Yeah.
which make it really, really interesting, on top of
Mm.
which I think it's got Thunderbolt 3 as opposed to Thunderbolt 4, but still,
Right.
with Thunderbolt 3, like, that's you can plug it into storage, like, there's a whole
Yeah.
bunch of stuff that you can
Yeah.
do with these things now, and we're still talking about something that's the same size as, like, a
Tiny.
Fire Stick, basically.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe a little bit longer, a little bit
Yes.
heavier,
Yeah, it was a
and has more
longer
power
Fire Stick.
requirements.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, but very, very cool. A friend of mine
Yeah.
used to use those for, like, sales presentations. You just
Mhm.
go in and plug in the HDMI and then
Yeah.
run through a PowerPoint deck, that kinda thing.
Yeah.
Perfect horsepower for that kind of
Yeah.
situation. Yeah, very, very cool.
Mm.
What else we got? Okay, not too much in the chat here. The other thing I wanted to talk to you about was this cyber cab. We seem to be getting closer and closer to trains. I just want to make sure everybody's well aware that a truck that follows a track in a line, sorry, not a truck, a vehicle that follows the track in a line with other vehicles following the same track together, to me, sounds a lot like a train. That demo to me looked like train cars.
Oh,
I'm sorry.
I think we're thinking about something different.
I'm talking about the cybercab. If it could just go down the street from point A to point B in a set course, it seemed like it
Oh,
was
there
a
were
train.
two things. There was like the car,
There
and
was
then
a
there was
car
like the
cab thing,
bus.
right? Oh, I'm thinking about the bus. Sorry, I'm thinking
Mm.
about the bus. The bus to me looked like a train car. When
Mm.
I'm saying car, sorry,
Yeah.
I'm thinking train car.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Yeah.
I didn't watch the full announcement. I'm
Yeah,
sorry. I should have.
I didn't really spend much time. There were yeah, uh, I couldn't. I mean, then there was a car is supposed to be like a taxi, and they're going to sell like a whole bunch of them to one company, and that replaces their taxis, or it becomes your
Right,
you individuals would buy these and then rent them out as local taxi cabs.
right.
Um,
Or this would
but
replace so we've got Moto here, but I'm sure there's something like that where you live, where it's like car sales sharing kind of thing,
mm,
because it can get cleaned and stuff like that after like, I get that, the
oh, okay,
reusable, shareable kinda car, that
right,
sounds pretty cool. But no steering wheel is frightening to me.
yeah, yeah,
I
yeah,
I understand why, but also and it did
yeah.
stop for those, cyclists, I believe was the demo, but
What's that?
they did stop for the cyclists in the
Oh, yeah,
demo, which is
yeah,
good, but
good,
also,
yeah.
yeah, without the steering wheel, I'm a little bit
Um,
concerned.
yeah, it seems a little bit early to have something like that. I mean, it, but that said, if they're able to get away with the super dangerous Cybertruck, well, okay, it's not that much of a stretch. They're both going to kill a lot of people, but okay.
Yeah, have you been in a Cybertruck yet?
I have one very close neighbor, like proximity, close neighbor who has one, and there's at least two or three others on the island. So I see them often, uh, but uh, and everybody all all of them are very excited by their Cybertrucks.
Right.
Um, I think nobody else who who sees them, who is sees them around, are as excited as the owners are.
Fair enough. Yeah, sorry, I get the terms wrong. So someone in the chat said that the Robovan and Cybercab are supposed to eventually be fully autonomous.
Hmm.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. And right now, honestly, following guides in a road is
Yeah,
maybe the ideal situation I'm looking for, but I'm in
yeah,
the minority. I really think we need electric trains. That's
yeah,
like Minority Report is basically what I'm thinking
yeah,
about. And
yeah. Oh yeah,
doesn't
yeah.
even need to be in the
That's
air, but like where
right,
the trains can like join a queue and
right.
like leave a queue, and then they all talk to each other. I think
Yep.
is very
Yeah,
interesting to me.
that'll be great.
Yeah,
Um,
pop out pedals.
yeah, weren't they all Audis in that movie?
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, maybe. Yeah, like flying
Um,
R8s? Very interesting. Oh,
yeah.
the The only other thing we were talking about just prior to this in the green room was we had talked about some vulnerabilities in the
Yeah.
Arc browser, and then the Firefox browser apparently has
Yeah.
some security vulnerabilities as
So
well.
the
What happened there?
the Fireship video about it basically says, last week we talked about the Arc browser, vulnerability, and all Firefox users said, "Phew, good thing I'm using Firefox." And now there's a Firefox vulnerability, which apparently is a lot worse, but it's already
Oh
been
no.
fixed. But if you
Okay.
have those older, that older, like a week ago browser, then it better update quickly because it's the apparently if the exploiter can basically take over your browser.
Oh,
It
that's not
is, yeah, it's
that's not what we
significant.
want.
Um,
I probably do have an older version of Firefox on one of
yeah,
these boxes I was just playing around with because
that
they've
I
been
never
turned off
bring
for a
up
bit.
because I don't touch. I mean, I don't touch Firefox, but I've got it
Yeah,
installed.
yeah,
So
I
yeah,
use it as like the secondary browser for a lot of stuff,
yeah.
honestly. Yeah,
Let's
I
see.
think what I was using this morning was ungoogled Chromium. Just
Mm-hmm.
randomly
Yep.
was in the store that I was looking at. I say store here because I'm using like the Pop! OS shop on Pop! OS for one of these boxes,
Hmm.
which big fan of Pop! OS.
Yes. Yes. I love their machines, their actual physical hardware. Was it System 76?
Yes, yeah,
Yep.
definitely. And they make a keyboard as well.
Yep.
Definitely have to support somebody who makes their own keyboard.
Yeah.
The other was about the robot voice acting here. So I didn't realize the voices. The robots have voices. I
Hmm.
apologize there. So I'm not sure what they were using in terms of voices, but I when I saw the robots, I thought a lot about aging populations, say in Japan or something like that. Maybe thinking about my mom-in-law and like how these robots could help there. Because I think a lot of the explanations were just kind of like regular stuff, helping around the house, that kind of thing. But I was thinking like, hey, what if the person fell over and needed assistance or something like
Right.
that, or need to call an
Well,
ambulance or something like that? Like that's
then
interesting to me.
I would imagine that wouldn't they stop what they were doing and the guy who's actually got the remote control that's controlling the robot would
Great.
stop and go
Good
take care
call.
of it. Because I mean they pointed
Because
out,
right now they're telepresence devices, right?
yeah, I mean there's somebody contring it.
Yeah, it's
It's
kind of
not
like
a
the
robot on its own.
listen, let me get ahead of myself here. But I think what they were showing is more familiar to me as like the robots in the peripheral. So it's
Mhm.
something that you're using, maybe not in an alternate universe in the
Right.
same universe you're in, but at least using something remotely, which
Yeah.
as a telepresence, yeah. Yeah.
You
Zoe
you
Roman
were
says, yeah. Go ahead.
thinking of robots. You were really excited about that program on Apple TV recently. Did you ever
Yes.
finish it?
I did. I would say it ended a lot better than it started, and a lot of the things that I didn't like about it were explained basically by the plot.
Okay.
Well, we could say plot armor, but yeah, a lot of the bad interface or bad
Mhm.
GUI or whatever this thing was basically explained later.
Okay.
It was a good show. Was it Sunny?
We
I think
we watched one episode, and when we were looking
this
at,
episode
well,
was
what
bad.
should we watch the second episode? Tony basically said, that was kind of scary. I don't want to see that."
I wasn't scared. I thought the acting was bad, honestly, and I thought
Mm,
the premise was bad. But by episode 3, I started to actually
yeah.
like it. I think the main thing is the main character is supposed to be detestable, and
Mm.
that's exactly what I was getting from the first episode. Is not a fan of the main character.
We went to some. I don't even remember the nationality of the restaurant, but it was an Asian type of restaurant
Okay,
in Chicago,
right.
back when I was still at Olama, and uh, there all the food was delivered by these essentially robots that
Oh, like
came
the
to your
Robbie the
table.
Robo kind of
Yeah,
carts. How was
um,
that?
it was okay. There was a attendant that would come by all with every order and would be the one that actually takes the tray off. So it was kind of basically this tray that gets delivered, and then the person comes by and lifts the tray onto your or the plates onto your table.
Yeah, I'm just
But
trying
it
to work
reminded
backwards
me
from the
of
benefit. Like, are we stopping people from dropping dishes on the ground? Maybe.
well, it allows the person to carry like the
More.
entire table's worth of
That's a good
plates
point.
all in one swoop. You know.
So it's faster.
Yeah.
It's faster
Yeah.
and probably less breakage.
Although the person is probably walking slower because the robot
The
doesn't move
robot's
very
pretty slow.
fast. So I don't know.
Uh, a friend of mine went to a restaurant locally and said that they had one of those robots as well, but the problem was it would just stand by your table for a while, and I'm
Mm,
saying stand loosely. It would stationarily
yeah.
sit by your table,
Yeah.
and it's hard. Like they were with children, and it's hard not to pay attention to the thing the
Yeah.
entire meal
Yeah.
because it's there. It hasn't been given a new directive, so it's just gonna
Right.
wait by
Yeah.
you.
Yeah.
Seems awkward. Yeah. Started weird. Like, imagine if your server just stood by you the whole meal. Would you have a
Just
conversation
stare.
with it?
Are you
Yeah,
done with
the
that?
children were talking to the robot, obviously, the entire meal.
Yeah.
Yeah, fancy trolley. Would agree with the chat here.
Yeah.
The only other thing I was playing around with was Stable Diffusion. I mentioned a little
Hmm.
bit. I went looking for models. I landed on Flux. I'm not sure if
Okay.
you've played with that at all. It's
No.
remarkably interesting. It's a completely different type of model, and they
Hmm.
say that the Flux Pro one is even better. But in terms of like using it with Stable Diffusion, Flux seemed to give for humans pretty good human
Yeah.
but I don't know, representations
Right.
so that the hands and the poses, yeah, it didn't look like 6 or weird
Yeah.
fingers coming
Yeah.
out of odd places because by default, Stable Diffusion is not great at
Yeah.
generating humans. Pretty good at generating dogs. I will often
Yeah.
say like, give me pugs or pugs." It still has issues with like the delineation between 2 animals and like what
Right.
that should look like. So if 2 heads are close together, that can get messy. But otherwise, yeah, Flux seems to be pretty good as like a safe for work kind of model that you can
Hmm.
use on Stable Diffusion. Would recommend.
Uh, my thing that I often try creating are llamas. I mean, I've created many
Yep,
llamas
makes
on these
sense.
things, but the problem that a lot of the tools, other than I still use Midjourney for a lot of
Yep.
stuff, but anything else, llamas always have human hands. So it's really weird because I mean when you have the llama doing something that's kind of human like
Right.
human what a human would do uh a llama at a computer and the llama has human hands rather than
I had to Google this because I was like, do they have hooves?
they have yeah they have the
They have
two
they have feet. They have feet with 2 toes.
two toes,
These
yes.
they're not hooves. Very
Yes.
interesting. Wow. Okay, so it need to be like 2 fingers kind of, I guess, if they were to make it
Yeah, but they're like
accurate.
full
That's really
hands with
weird. Yeah,
thumbs, opposing
yeah.
thumbs. Yeah.
Because if you get a like a llama using a computer, it would
Yeah.
need to have very interesting.
But I don't know if those two they can do anything like separate those two. I think they're like kind of stuck together. I mean,
Well,
they're
yeah, it
really
looks like
close.
they could be moved independently, but I don't know if they could, like, grab stuff.
Yeah,
Very interesting. Oh, wow.
maybe this is something we need to learn
Yeah.
more about.
I
What can a llama do with its hooves? Or sorry, not hooves, but
yeah,
yeah,
yeah, yeah, are these opposable,
yeah,
toes?
yeah.
I have not tested Imagine 3, which somebody mentioned in the chat with
Hmm.
Gemini. I should get back into that. Yeah, somebody else said Flux is good. I really just sorted by most popular in Civet AI, and it had to go into a different area. It's like a node or something like that,
Hmm.
as opposed to like a LoRa or a model. But it's actually really interesting. Flux was yeah,
Yeah,
it's
I guess I mean that's the thing that's part of Twitter, right? The Twitter
oh
whatever
really?
Grok, and image generation is done
Oh
via Flux. And I've tried a bunch of times. I mean, it'd be really great if I could just use that versus having the subscription to Midjourney. But every time I've tried, it's like, screw this. Let me go back to Midjourney, and because it just does it faster, better. So
interesting.
I haven't spent enough time with that.
Yeah, I'm looking through. I don't see Twitter in here at all. It looks like it's flux1.ai is where it comes
Hmm.
from.
Well, I mean, if
Um,
I go into Grok,
it
oh,
does
I
this say
don't know
Flux?
if you have to be. Uh,
I don't have access to Grok.
okay,
For example, yeah.
okay,
Oh yeah. Okay, so someone says it's a fine tune of Flux. Okay,
yeah,
interesting. So maybe they've licensed it or something.
yeah,
That's really cool. It's surprisingly good. Like it
yeah.
I was really impressed because normally you'd have to have a bunch of different LoRa's that are added and
Mm-hmm.
like one big model and add
Yeah.
all this stuff together, and by the time
Yeah.
you're done, it felt like it would take
I've
20
never
gigabytes
understood
of
it.
memory, and, like, it would take 30 seconds, and you get something that's just so-so.
Yeah. Yeah, I've often been asked by people like, "When are you gonna cover like the image generation things?" Like, well,
Mm.
I don't really have any experience with. I haven't done anything,
Oh.
so but maybe I should because I mean they've
Oh,
all
okay.
basically said, well, the way I explain things they really like, and so therefore it'd be really neat to. But
Gotcha.
uh,
I can give you use cases for me. So a lot of times I'm
yeah,
trying to think of, like themes or imagine you saw like I've been reading about or watching videos about John Singer Sargent, who's like a very
mm-hmm.
realistic
Yeah,
painter,
yeah,
and he's got some amazing,
yep,
amazing paintings. And the question, of course, in my mind, because I don't know if the ego is what like runs my brain cells or whatever, is like, how do I make photos like this? How would I
mm,
describe this lighting, or like what would this mood be, or maybe these
right,
tones, because sometimes it's hard for me to come up with the words that look like that so I
right,
can find more. But I do find describing images with these, so it's image to text as opposed to text to image, is pretty
mm-hmm.
interesting. Even for me, if I want to make a series of portraits that I've already made and I don't
Right,
understand what's unique or novel about the image, I can have it actually describe the style to me, and then I can go further down that,
right,
like lean into that style, which I thought was interesting. But the business hat part of my brain is like, you know, the old meme, like, "Look at this Datadog graph." Like, what's going on in this picture? I
right,
don't know.
yeah,
Like, I've got a chart, there's a red thing, I'm not sure
right,
how I should read it. To me, it tells, like, a sporadic intermittent issue, but, like, what does this look like? If I had a
yeah,
second, like, a quote, unquote, "second set of eyes," could it
yeah.
describe it to me? And it's not there yet. I don't know if you've tried this yet, but you can, like, drag
No.
a picture of an error into there, and it will
Mm.
kinda give you interesting answers, but it will say, like, "It looks like there's an error," kinda thing. It won't
Yeah,
necessarily describe it very well. Some of the ones are pretty good though. They'll
yeah.
describe the time frame and they'll actually give you
Mm.
like where you should go, which is we're getting to a spot which is kind of interesting to me. So imagine you're doing perhaps synthetic tests of a website and you've got
Right.
video
Yep.
recordings of them, and you can feed them into this
Right.
to be like that preview kind of, somebody's looking at this before you've
Yep.
looked at it. So don't wake me up at 3 a.m. because of that synthetics recording. But
Right.
if 100% of the recordings show this one error and it looks like it's new, maybe
Well, I
this
mean,
is emerging, let me
that
know, kind
does
of thing.
solve a very real problem that I often encountered, being the person that I created the training team at Datadog. And so whenever you're building out training, you're saying, well, now go to this page, and on the top right
Right,
corner there's a button, click that button
right.
and whatever. But Datadog
The
is,
button moves.
releasing what, 10, 50, 100 versions in a day, and the
Right,
button moves or the button changes to a tab, and having something that records, you can easily record a demo using Puppeteer or something like that,
right,
but then the analysis is what's harder. Like, okay, now somebody's got to sit and watch hours and hours of boring videos,
right,
and having something that says, oh well, this button is now a tab. Oh God. And so, and before it was so hard that you had to rely on customers finding errors and reporting those errors, because there's just no way that
right.
anybody's going to have the bandwidth to do that. Of course, they always say, well, why didn't you QA this? This is obvious. It's obvious. It's not a button. It's a tab. It's like, well, it was a button 20 minutes ago.
Exactly, it's literally just changed, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And some of the use cases, especially when you're talking about, and I hate to say the word enterprise, but when you're talking about enterprise UI,
Yeah.
because you get enterprise clients, they will often expect it to not change for a long
Yeah.
time.
Yeah.
And again, my opinions are my own, but
Right.
there does seem to be a case in some businesses where they want like the enterprise, like long-term support
Right.
UI.
Sure.
And sometimes they're like absolutely like using a macro to move the mouse and
Right.
click on stuff in XY coordinates and stuff like that. And it's not great.
Yeah.
But if it's, I don't know, some Dell Boomi workflow or something like that,
Yeah.
they've paid thousands of dollars to create, I guess it kind of makes sense. But
Hmm.
also, I understand why you'd want to release
Yeah.
50, 60 updates a day when it has to
Yeah.
do with UI, and you're getting like a deluge of bug reports that are coming in
Right.
from left, right, and center all day, every day.
Yeah.
It's tough. It's neither here nor there, I guess is what
Yeah.
I'm saying. So having another set of eyes, it doesn't cost
Yeah.
as much
Yeah.
in terms of overhead to go look at it, this is probably what happened. Maybe have a
Right.
look around here, and perhaps you could change your puppeteer code here, would be
Yep. Yep.
phenomenal. Yeah, I hate doing those recordings. I
Yeah.
really like the macro recorder that we've got. I will say
Oh
that
yeah.
much. Yes.
Macro recorder.
Yeah, so it's a little plugin in Chrome. You have it
Oh,
running, and
okay.
when you go to do your synthetics test, basically it will
Right.
record you. It's called something else. My apologies. I
Yeah.
think it's Datadog Screen Recorder, but it,
Yeah.
it will actually record where you go on the page
Right.
and make sure that you click buttons with the same element names.
Right.
But you're right, an element
Yeah.
type can absolutely mess this up because it's
Yeah.
like a CSS selector, if I
Yeah.
recall correctly, similar to the way Puppeteer works.
Yeah, and that's, I mean, use being at Datadog, that makes more sense. But that was meant to create the tests rather than being the test itself, not like
Correct.
recording the test. Although you could record,
It records it,
yeah,
yep.
it records,
Yeah,
yeah,
it'll spit out, like, a new browser
yeah,
window, sorry, I'm saying spit out, it'll pop out,
yeah,
a new browser window, so it's not like it's like a tab, basically, and you can do
yeah,
stuff in there, and then when you're done, it sends the recordings back.
hmm,
It's pretty handy.
yeah,
I think in the past, I used to use things like AutoIt on Windows to do some of this stuff
mm,
for X-rays at hospitals, like, just
mm,
random things for software, but basically, imagine that you're trying to virtualize, like, an X-ray app, and
right,
absolutely, I get down to XY coordinates if I
yeah,
couldn't read
yeah,
the button on the screen. It was not pretty.
wow.
What about yourself? Any checkouts for this week? I realize it's been a
You
couple
know,
weeks before this.
we finally started catching up on Slow Horses, so now
Oh,
we're
so
only
good.
one season back.
Oh, fantastic. I'm
And
so
it's
jealous
great.
of you.
It's so great.
Yeah, it is so good.
Um, and of course, watching that reminds me there was another show 10 years ago, 15 years ago that I enjoyed watching, but thinking back on I seem to remember it being kind of cheesy at the time, and I think it was probably even worse. But although it's got a cast that they've done all sorts of interesting things since then. It was
Hmm.
a show called, I think in the UK it was called Spooks, and in the
Oh, I've heard of
US it
Spooks.
was called, I think it was called MI5 in the US.
It looks like it was,
It-
yeah.
yeah. So it reminded me of that, although that was a lot more the experience of the two women kind of running the show and their experience rather than these people who were actually in the field. Um, uh, but uh, but
Yeah,
yeah,
I
so
did
we
find
were,
that meta story is really interesting, right? Because you
yeah,
get the view from the top as well
yeah,
as all the way down to the
yeah,
grunts, basically.
right. But one that I started watching 2 nights ago, and I loved this show, but I've gone back and started again. And so I started with the 3 or 4 hour miniseries, and starting with and then started last night watched the first 2 episodes of the 2004 Battlestar Galactica.
Fantastic.
And I love that show. I That was one of my, I often think, if I think of like best shows I've ever, like long term shows lasted multiple seasons and then had to come to an end. That's my favorite. Of all the endings to shows, that felt like the most satisfying ending, and it was great. So I'm starting to watch that again.
Now, since I have to relate everything to Vancouver, did you want me to let
Uh
you know that Battlestar Galactica was
yes,
shot here? I had to Google it just to make sure because I'm pretty bad at quoting facts I don't know anything about, but yes,
yeah. I
this was
see. Yeah, I mean,
this
it's
one.
so Caprica is all.
I think a lot of it was, like, the SFU is where
Mm,
they so there's, like, a university location where they shot a lot of stuff, but there's
right.
also, like, a farm, some stuff in West Vancouver.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's it's very cool.
Yeah. Yeah.
I love just seeing those little, like, places that you've gone
Yeah.
past a lot
Oh
of
yeah.
times and you
Yeah.
don't even notice, like, they're filming The Last of Us season 2 here now,
Mm.
and once in a while, we'll see what they're doing,
Uh
and
huh.
it's really cool to see them, like, plaster on fake plants
Yeah.
onto places to make it look like overgrowth. I don't know,
Yeah.
because then you watch it in
Yeah.
the series and it doesn't even look the same, but
Yeah, there was a show, there was a movie called Free something
mhm.
with Ryan Reynolds.
Oh,
Um,
right.
not that long ago, maybe a year, 2 years ago, maybe a little bit longer than that, 3 years, 4 years. But I remember them. That was all. There was a lot of scenes of that were filmed in downtown Boston, and
Ah, was
right
it Free
by
Guy?
the, huh? Free Guy.
Free Guy? Okay, I still
Yes,
haven't seen it.
and there were a number of scenes that were filmed maybe a block from the Datadog office. So actually,
That's really
yeah.
cool.
So and in fact, um, there was a section of road that they had to close off and then reface all the. Actually, while they were before they like closed it off, they were
Right,
refacing all the shops, including. I feel like they were like making it look older and looking, just
right.
really neat. And then you could see them close it off and have debris in the road. And yeah, it's always fun seeing the movie actually being made. There were so
Yeah.
many. I feel like there were so many recordings, people doing videos out their windows from one of the Transformer movies, and there were a lot of people because they filmed that like in some city, and all the people in the offices, they were still working and they were recording as they're filming this massive crash scene. So you can find so many of these copies or so many of these viewpoints of the same scene on YouTube.
Now, I don't know, like, I hear the Joker 2 is terrible, but I do recall the first movie, at least, had filmed in and around New York, and I don't know what they had done, but, like, a lot of that footage we didn't see until after it was released, so I feel like they
Mm,
somehow found the people who were, like, there was one video I recall of him going down the stairway that came out before the movie came out, that iconic kind of dance scene, but that was it, like, I really didn't see a lot, so I wonder if they've got someone on staff who goes around looking for like letting
right,
people know, hey, by the way, please don't use this, slip them a
right,
50 or
right.
something.
Yeah,
Like there's got to be the budget, the difference
yeah,
between doing all of this in CGI and doing it in
yeah,
person has to include like, please don't film this. I'll pay
yeah,
you off.
yeah, yeah.
Because I'm sure it's like astronomical to do all of this in
Oh yeah,
post, and
yeah.
doing it in person actually saves a lot in terms of cost
Right,
and time. Yeah,
right.
very cool. Uh, I guess we could leave it there. We could
Yeah,
almost end on time. We're only a couple
yeah.
minutes over.
I
Thank
think
you very
so.
much for all the questions in the chat. That
Did
was
did was
awesome.
anybody disappointed that we didn't spend enough time on AI or
I
whatever your
didn't
favorite topic is?
I think it was meaty enough this week. We peaked at
Yeah.
around 22 people, which was pretty surprising to
Okay.
me. So
Yeah.
thank you for
Yeah.
those who tuned in. Hopefully I was more on topic this week than usual.
All
All right.
right. Well, I think we'll find the end button.
Let's find that
I
end
think
stream
it
button.
is
Thanks,
right. I
folks.
think it's the one right here. All right. Bye, all. Did I press it?
Oh, maybe not.
Oh, well, maybe that will take longer. Uh,
Toot, toot.